They say that before you can judge someone, you need to walk a mile in their shoes. And that's exactly what I thought I should do before making a review of these Astraflex cycling gloves. In fact, I rode over 1,000 miles in them. If you watched the video of our pre-Edinburgh to Grantham ride, you will have remembered me telling you that a company called LuxeBiking had sent Wendy and I a pair each of their Astraflex Pro cycling gloves. And their only stipulation was that we should share our genuine experience of the product. And that impressed me. And as you'll see in what comes up, we do share our genuine experience. And I have to say, it's not all positive. During the 1,000 miles I rode in these gloves, I've ridden in all conditions. I've ridden on really rough surfaces, extreme heat, cold, and also I got caught in a biblical deluge that actually filled my shoes with water. It was that bad. So these gloves have been through the ringer, and almost literally, because they've been washed countless times. So the gloves I'm going to show you now are not the new ones that arrived. They are the gloves at the end of what is actually now almost 1,100 miles of riding. So it's going to give a true impression of their durability. I don't think LuxeBiking's advertising does them any good. And that's because the image shows what looks like a pretty hard pad, and somebody did comment that these look more suitable for mountain biking. But as you'll see here, the pads are quite soft, and even after almost 1,100 miles they've not lost that padding, they've not lost that resilience. I use the fitting recommended by LuxeBiking on their website, and I would say my fit is perfectly okay. Probably a little bit on the loose side, but I like that. I do find with previous gloves I've owned that I do get a lot of pressure around the fingers, and that can cause circulation problems for me. So I like these. These are really comfortable gloves. I did find them slightly difficult to remove. There's only a very small tab that you can use to pull them off, but it's not really a big deal unless you're putting them on and off regularly. But I do find now that they've eased up a little bit, now I've worn them a long time, they are much easier to remove. For putting them back on, there's a much larger tab, and that would have been probably more useful for removing them. I do like the fact that they cover the wrist fairly well, and that was quite useful for me because during the Edinburgh to Grantham ride I came off twice, and although the cuff wouldn't protect you from breaking your wrist, they certainly covered my wrist enough to avoid any scratches and cuts to that part of my hand. And you'll see here that the Velcro fastening is nice and wide and gives a good firm fit. And of course they've got the regulation absorbent thumb pad, which of course is very useful for wiping the brow. Now, surprisingly for a British summer, we have had a couple of really hot days, one of which I was riding in, and I did find these gloves to be excellent. They were well ventilated, my hands didn't get hot and sweaty. Some gloves I've had to remove in really hot weather because I found them to get really uncomfortable, so these passed that test well. Unfortunately, things were not as positive from Wendy's point of view. So let's hear from Wendy about her experience. So Wendy, I've just been explaining that I've done over 1,000 miles in these gloves, but you've not done quite as many. Tell us why.
I did about the first 4 or 5 days of the Edinburgh trip, but I found I was getting blisters on my hands because they were too big, basically. Yeah. So I did a swap with my brother-in-law, who's loving them and really enjoying riding with them. But it was quite interesting when I went back to normal gloves afterwards. I noticed that they weren't as cushioned as much. So even though I was getting the blisters, I was clearly getting, you know, some of the impact taken out by using the gloves. So if I had a small pair, it would have been fine.
And I think we should explain that we did question the sizing, didn't we?
Yeah, we did,
with
because I was
LuxeBiking.
on the edge, wasn't I, between small and a medium.
And they said no, go for medium. So my recommendation to anybody would be, if they are on the cusp, as it were, then they should go a size smaller.
Yeah, I would certainly try small before going any bigger.
But it's interesting that you found the difference.
Yeah, I was surprised because when you put them on, you don't think they're any different, do you?
No.
But it's only when you go back to some others that you think, oh, well, yeah, maybe I do miss them after all.
Good. So I think you can see from that that Wendy's issue was only on the sizing, and it was only when she switched to an alternative pair of gloves she realised how comfortable the Astraflex gloves were. So it's just a shame that the sizing was slightly out. So if you're buying these gloves and you're on the limit between two sizes, we'd suggest going smaller. And as you heard, Wendy's brother-in-law is now the new owner of these gloves, and he's loving them. Another person that loved the gloves was Paul, who joined us on the latter part of the Edinburgh to Grantham ride. It wasn't until we got to the cafe that I saw Paul was wearing the same gloves. I did ask him about them, and he said he really liked them. He found them comfortable, he found them good value. I think he'd paid around £35 for them, but he thought they were good value and really good gloves, so that was nice to know. Now, in terms of branding, you will have seen the name InBike on these gloves, but LuxeBiking tell me that they're in the process of rebranding. So the gloves will now be called the Astraflex Pro from LuxeBiking. So hopefully that won't cause too much confusion. Now, one of the claims LuxeBiking make in their advertising is that these will help to reduce numbness in the hands, otherwise known as hand palsy. Numbness in the hands when you're riding the bike can actually be caused by an incorrect saddle position, or it could be caused by you not having enough core strength. Now, it would seem the obvious thing to do if you have problems with numbness and pins and needles in the hands when you're riding, is to actually move the saddle forward to take the pressure off your hands. But that's totally the wrong thing to do. Ideally, you should be moving the saddle rearwards, and that will actually help take the pressure off your hands. I have had this problem when I've changed saddles over and I've had the saddle too far forward, and I've immediately got this numbness in the hands. Ideally, you should go for a bike fit if you're riding a lot, but if not, have a look online, get the advice on saddle fore and aft position. But what I can say is these do help to reduce the vibration because of this excellent padding. Now, it was difficult for me to be objective about these on my Tempest bike because I do have the Redshift shock stop stem, and that's just taking all the vibrations out of the handlebar. Wendy doesn't have that stem, and you'll remember how she commented on the difference she felt. I have had the experience without this stem because on my Ribble CGR I don't have the shock stop stem. I also have narrower tyres, and they're tube tyres, so I'm running them at higher pressure. And I would think I've ridden about 150 miles on that bike in the past month, and I can certainly feel the difference with these gloves. In fact, last night I went out for a ride and I forgot to take the gloves. It was a warm night and I hadn't even thought about it. And I did feel the difference, so I can vouch for that. I didn't comment about these gloves on the Edinburgh to Grantham ride purely because I wanted to see how they stood up over a long period of time. But as you can often see my handlebars in the videos, you'll see I was wearing them the whole time. Well, I hope that was useful. You'll have probably seen these gloves advertised mainly on Facebook and those sort of places. So hopefully this gave you an insight to the product behind all the glossy adverts. If you appreciate this sort of content and testing, then please give the video a like because it does help a lot. And if you want to join us for some of our future adventures, then please subscribe. It's all free, and if you hit that bell button, you'll be informed when anything new comes up. So thanks for joining us, and look forward to you joining us next time. Bye for now.